And now we'll start the process of slowly building it up to our target temp of about 260 to 270. All right, so today we're going to be doing a pork shoulder. I'm going to smoke this thing up to right around 200 degrees, and then we're going to pull it all apart and make some great pulled pork with it. Rule number one of barbecue is always be drinking while you're running your grill. Today I got a bottle of High West bourbon. Really good bottle of bourbon, not too expensive. If you've never had it and you see it in your liquor store, give it a try. You won't be disappointed. Cheers. So let's get back to this pork shoulder. Pork shoulder is probably my favorite meat to smoke on the grill because it's super simple to do. They're really, really hard to screw up. I mean, you really got to try hard to screw up a pork shoulder. You can cook them low and slow, 225, and take 18 plus hours to do it. I don't know why you would. Or you can run them faster. I like to run mine around 275 and usually knock them out in 8 to 10 hours. I've found literally no difference between a pork shoulder that's cooked at 225 versus a pork shoulder that's cooked at 275 or even 300. The only difference is how much time it takes. So my target temp on cooking this thing today is around 275, and that should get us done in about 8 hours. So I really don't do any trimming on these things. They don't really need it. They got lots of marbled fat inside that's going to render down and break down throughout the cook. Nice big fat cap on the bottom. I always cook fat cap side down because my heat source comes from the bottom, and I want that fat cap to act as an insulator to help protect that meat from overcooking and drying out. So when it comes to pork, I like to have a little bit of sweetness with my pork, and so I like to use blue agave as kind of my bonding agent for my rub. So I always start out by just putting a little bit of this blue agave on there. It doesn't really take much. Spread it all around. And then apply my rub. And this is just a basic pork rub, nothing too fancy. Lots of paprika, salt, sugar, pepper, some other spices. And you want to make sure you get it all over on the sides. Those are important too, any openings. Just checked on the grill. The temp is coming up real nicely. We're up to about 160 now, so about 100 more degrees and we'll be ready to throw this shoulder on. One thing I highly recommend you do while you're waiting for your grill to come up to temp is drink more bourbon. All right, the grill is finally up to temp, so it's time to throw this bad boy on. It's been sitting out for about a half hour now while the grill gets up to temp. Don't worry, it's 40 degrees outside right now, so it's not getting warm. Some of that rub has started to soak in a little bit, so I always like to just sprinkle on a fresh little coat and dust it off before we throw it on the grill. It's ready to go. Let's go put it on the grill. All right, so we're about 4.5 hours into this cook. I just checked the grill. It was running a little hot around 285. It had dropped to about 260 on me, so I opened up some vents and went back in the house for a little while to do some work, and temperature ran up a little bit, but 285 is fine, not a big deal at all. So close some vents down a little bit to try to get that temp back down to around that 270, 280 mark, and we'll go check on the pork shoulder and see how it's doing. 4.5 hours in, haven't looked at it yet. We'll take a look. So far, so good. So we're about 6 hours in. I just probed it. It's reading about 155. Would really like it to be a little further along than it is right now. So I'm We're going to go ahead, pull it off, wrap it up in foil, crank up the heat, and that'll get that going and cook a lot quicker and be ready in time for dinner. All right, it's time to probe this thing. I can tell it's done without even looking at the thermometer because it went in like butter. 205, perfect. Time to pull it off and let it rest. This is the most important part of the process. You can do everything right up until now, but if you mess this part up, you just wasted your time. Pull this pork shoulder off, leave it wrapped in foil, put it in an empty cooler, put the lid on it, and walk away. Let it sit for at least 1 hour, longer if you can. When you let it rest, it's gonna pull all those juices back in, and that meat will be so tender. Just like that, put it in a cooler, cover it with a towel, let it sit. Repeat, let it sit. Do not touch this pork shoulder for at least an hour. All right, so I put this pork shoulder on the grill this morning at 9:30, pulled it off at 6 o'clock, so it cooked for about 8.5 hours, then let it rest for about 1.5 hours. Always take it out of the foil in a big bowl because there's lots of juices down in the bottom that you're going to want to mix in with your pork. And you can see that is just without any effort at all. It's just pulling apart beautifully. The rest is the most important part of the entire process. If you do not let it rest, you're wasting your time and you're making a huge mistake. When you let it rest, it tenderizes everything and it just pulls apart beautifully. No bear claws, no forks, nothing. There's going to be some fat on the bottom that you're going to want to pull out as you mix this in from that fat cap. Good bark. Bark held up really well. Look at how easy that comes apart. There you go. Pulled pork from a perfectly cooked pork shoulder in less than 9 hours.